I would like to welcome everybody who is watching us. Today we have a special guest, Vladi Yurovsky, who is the head of the office of the Israel bonds in Miami. He will say a few things about him, but I will introduce him. I will say a little bit about his CV, his background. Vladi Yurovsky immigrated to Miami in 1989 from former Soviet Union and has called Florida home for the last 30 plus years. He attended the University of Florida, received his MBA from Nova Southeastern University. Vladi has worked with Israel Bonds for a total of 6 years, first as a registered representative and most recently as the executive director. Prior to returning to Israel Bonds, he worked for JP Morgan's private bank and Merrill Lynch. Vladi is responsible for the management of the Miami and Tampa offices and leads the sales initiatives for the annual campaign of plus than $100 million for both institutional and retail sales. He proudly serves on the several organizations' boards with a focus on improving the lives of children, both in the US and abroad. Thank you, Vladi, for joining us today, and we are very happy to have you here. These times of COVID-19 allows us to have everybody from all over the world, this time from here, from Miami, via Zoom. And the first question I would like you to ask you is why did you join the bonds?
So first of all, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be with you today. It's a long story, but I'll try to sum it up quickly. So I had no idea what Israel bonds were, which I think is indicative of exactly the type of mission that we have undertaken in the past couple of years. So after graduating from grad school in 2006, I decided to get into wealth management during the financial crisis, and in 2009 that ended. So I was introduced by one of the Israel Bonds lay leaders to our then director, Cheryl Whiteman. And Cheryl basically told me what bonds were, how important they were, what a crucial role they played in the development of the state of Israel. And I realized that the community down here, while extremely supportive, didn't necessarily have the reach that they were looking for. So when I joined Israel Bonds the first time, I really made it my mission just to increase our branding in the community. So just take it a step back. For those who don't know, Israel Bonds are a direct investment in the state of Israel. Israel happens to be one of very few countries who have never had a late payment or a default on any of their bond issuances. We're actually in our 70th year right now. This is our anniversary year since the beginning. In the beginning, David Ben-Gurion, basically a couple years after the founding of the state of Israel, he stood up and he said, "Come," and opened his arms, and then they came. And they realized that we needed to, or the state of Israel really needed all of these things that a mass immigration or migration would be in need of, like the roads and the hospitals and airports and schools and all of these things. So David Ben-Gurion came in 1951 to Madison Square Garden, very famously, and they floated a bond issue. And the story goes that really no one expected to receive their money back. I think there were so many supporters of the state of Israel and so many people who were on board that they thought this was a gift. This was a gift to develop the state of Israel and to help them in their time of need, in their infancy. And then what wound up happening is that every year, every 6 months, the bond payments were made, the interest payments were made. And I think that speaks to kind of our differentiation between most other organizations that are charitable organizations, and we're not a donation, we're an investment. So since then, I was with Israel Bonds the first time for about 4.5, almost 5 years. We did a lot of work with something that we call our Young Investor Society, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But what we noticed really was that a lot of the supporters of Israel bonds and a lot of our investors were at the more seasoned end of the spectrum in terms of age. So what we found was that we really needed to start doing a better job of engaging the younger community, the kids coming right out of college, to do that as well. So that's just a little bit of the background.
Can you emphasize this point? What is the difference between donating, a lot of the organizations that are collecting money to donate to different causes in Israel, and what you do in the bonds?
Sure. So the companies that we work with, and we partner with many non-for-profits and Jewish organizations in the community. What they do is you're giving a gift, right? You're giving a gift for whatever purpose, whether that's to feed Holocaust survivors, to feed kids with food insecurity in our communities, to enable people to get their medicine, and this is great work that organizations like the Jewish Federation do, is they connect people with synagogues for high holidays, for example. And these are all incredible causes and initiatives that they have. We are an investment. We are regulated by FINRA. We adhere to all the rules and regulations. And the differentiation is that we give you your money back and with interest. Now, one of the things that a lot of people do is that they use Israel bonds to give as gifts to, obviously for bar and bar mitzvahs and weddings, which is, I think, kind of the basis of where a lot of people were first introduced to Israel bonds. But there are also folks who pay their non-for-profit dues with Israel bonds. They give them as gifts to their universities. Lots of wonderful ways to use Israel bonds. From, you can use them in your own investment account. You can put them in a retirement account, such as an IRA, or in some cases your 401k, and lots of different options there. So just to underline it again, we are, an investment that does pay a considerable rate of interest, and that's the main differentiator, I would say.
Where are you present in Florida? I mean, if somebody wants to invest in these bonds, did they approach you? Where are you at in Florida?
Sure. So we have 3 offices in Florida. Our office, the one I'm based in, not right now, but in general, is in North Miami. We're at 123rd and Biscayne. There is an office in Palm Beach County. I have a counterpart there. His name is Mark Rubin. He's been there for many years, and he does a great job in Palm Beach County. And then the rest of the state, so to speak, is covered by our Tampa office, and we have a great staff out there as well. And we're really expanding. We run a very lean operation, so we're expanding into other areas, but on one-off basis. So what we found, and especially now during all of this, is that we don't need a physical office necessarily to transact business. So we do have 3 offices here. We also cover Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands as well. And those are where you can find us. But really, if people want to invest, there's different. First of all, we can do a lot of our sales over the phone, email. We have an Israel Bonds app. We allow the ability to just invest online. So there's all sorts of ways to be able to reach us and to invest in the state of Israel.
And are there any sums that are, like maximum, minimum?
So we start at $36. That's the minimum. We don't have
It's like too high.
Exactly,
Price
a double
high?
high. And those are kind of our entry bonds, and they're great for, like I said earlier, for life cycle events, for bar and bat mitzvahs and weddings and anything that you can think of there. Our office will put together a gift card. It's all seamless, and you'll get it the next day in most cases if we can mail it out. To answer your other question, there is no maximum. We're willing to take as much as the finance ministry of Israel allows us to take, and they give us different goals every year. So
okay. Do you have also, I mean, outside of the United States, do you have a presence
We
internationally?
do. Yeah. So we have an operation in Canada. We have affiliates in Canada and in Europe. And a couple of years ago, Israel Bonds for their younger investors, they put on a boot camp, and it was over 4 or 5 days. It was actually in Austin, Texas, and I was fortunate enough to go. And one of the coolest things that we saw really was that there were people there from all over the world. We were expecting, when I was going, I was expecting some from Florida, some from New York, from LA, from Texas, that sort of thing. But there were so many individuals from Germany and from France and obviously from Israel, and it was just an absolute incredible melding of ideas and just thoughtful leadership. And it was an absolutely wonderful experience. So hopefully in the next year or two, we'll be able to recreate and have more live events like that. And also for our International Prime Ministers Club dinner that we do, again, obviously not this year, but we do have folks coming in from all over the world as well. So it's a very exciting organization to be a part of.
Is that the people that are buying the bonds are only from Jewish communities, or you have
No.
other people that?
So
Who are your audience?
Who are our clients? So our clients, they range from everyone to everyone. We have folks who use Israel bonds just as gift bonds for their kids or their grandkids, or contemporaries of mine that are going to weddings and for babies and all of those things. They're using bonds as well. We also have individual purchasers who purchase in large amounts in the 6 and 7 figures, who are greatly appreciated, obviously. And we do a lot of work with institutions and states. So for example, several cities in South Florida have purchased this year. They've really stepped up. Miami-Dade County stepped up as well. City of Aventura, City of Miami Beach, and obviously the state of purchases as well. So the State Board of Administration purchases. The state has our bonds in their pension plan. So it really runs the gamut. And I don't remember the exact number, but it's close to 30 states that invest in Israel bonds, which is, I think, a huge achievement. We also sell to insurance companies, universities, unions. We've sold to police and fire, pension plans, and I think it really speaks to the stability of Israel bonds as an investment. I think on one side of it, you're doing it to support the state of Israel and really make a statement, but I think that governmental organizations have such a higher standard for fiduciary and fiscal responsibility that they are not putting random investments into their portfolios. So a lot of what we've done is based on a significant amount of due diligence that our clients do. We make sure that it's a suitable investment for what they're trying to achieve. So in addition to that, we have a really good relationship with our evangelical friends. We have worked with several churches in the community. I think in 2013, I was at church every Sunday, just talking about Israel and Israel bonds, and just expanding the brand of Israel bonds in the community, because that's one of the things that we're really keen on doing is telling the story of the state of Israel and exactly what it is that we're able to do and how we're able to bond them, for, pardon the pun, but to the state of Israel. Yeah.
Israel celebrated recently in May its 72nd anniversary. How long has the bonds? I mean, you mentioned what Ben Gurion did in New York. So I imagine right from the beginning. So can you give us an overview of how it started and where we are today? I mean, what is the significance of even the investments to the development of the state of Israel?
Sure. So since inception, we've done about 45 billion with a B, a little over that actually, in investment in the state of Israel, which I think it's a monumental number just through Israel bonds. I think we've been able to kind of be the safety net for the state of Israel during less than favorable times. But I also think that we've been able to allow people the opportunity to invest when times were good and interest rates were great and the economy was booming as well. So we've kind of been there in good times and in bad. And similar to the founding of the state of Israel, as you mentioned, we are in our 70th year, which is extremely exciting, and we have a lot of really great programming coming up in that same vein around not only the 70th anniversary, but also the High Holiday campaign and lots
We'll
of
talk
exciting.
about the high holiday in a second.
Sure.
I wanted to ask you that if after you thank you for this overview, does it exist in other countries? I mean, is this something unique to Israel?
So there are government and treasury bonds that are floated by different countries and different
But the success.
that. To my knowledge, I don't know of an organization like this benefiting any other country. There are obviously on the markets, you can invest in U.S. treasuries and Canadian treasuries and all of that, but I don't know an organization that exists.
I'm talking about the countries that are on the scale of Israel, like 9 million people, very small country, relatively young.
To my knowledge, no such thing exists. No organization. I mean, there are government entities that sell on behalf of their countries, and they sell, and float debt issues on a regular basis. But I don't know of any organization that's even comparable to. Well, I don't know any country that's comparable to the state of Israel to begin with, but I don't know of any other organization that does the same.
So, according to what you're saying, it actually shows a lot of confidence in Israel, not only from the Jewish communities that, it's also involved emotional and feeling that Israel is a part of their identity, but also populations that are not just like cities. And I know it's not only in Florida. I know that in New York as well, and NYPD and other organizations, and in Ohio also. That these are the visited the offices of the bonds that I visited. Do you think you can give an explanation why people have such confidence? Because after all, people, when they invest something, it's their money, it's their future. If you're talking about pensions of unions and others, it's putting their confidence in a relatively young country, and relying, like you said, it's not donation, relying on money coming back to them in a way, or in a profit. So do you have an explanation why these? I'm focusing on the non-Jewish because I'm trying to put the emotional part aside, or the automatic connection aside. Why they trust the bonds, the Israel bonds, and prefer it to other shares, I would say.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's a preference for one or the other. I think that Israel bonds have a really important role in a portion of somebody's fixed income portfolio, right? So when we think of investing, we think of mostly stocks and bonds in a retirement account, things like that. Obviously, you can diversify with real estate and alternative investments and hedge funds and all that exciting stuff. We are kind of the ballast of an investment portfolio, in my opinion. So we are the slow and steady investment that you know exactly what you're going to be getting. Our bonds don't fluctuate in value, meaning that if you purchase a bond at $25,000 in your portfolio, that's what it's going to be. There's no volatility, which is really great for pension plans and the municipalities that we work with. I also think that the originally, like as we mentioned earlier, I don't know if people truly expected to get these dollars back. And I think since then, considering the fact that we've had basically an unblemished record of repayment of not only you're getting your money back, but also the interest payments come on time. I think that that track record over so many years has really given people the confidence to be able to invest in Israel and know that those funds are coming back, right? Never an issue with a late payment, or we can't get to you, or there's a default in anything. And regardless of whatever wars or intifadas or anything else, Israel has always prioritized Israel bonds and returning both of capital and the interest. So I think that with experience and with a little bit more of a track record, the state of Israel has really been able to prove herself in a way that gives people a sense of confidence in the community. So knowing that, if you're a bank owner and you're investing in the state of Israel, you're not hopefully as concerned about any chance of default or anything like that. So it's fantastic.
I'm not an expert for stock exchange, but I'm interested to know, where do you find the bonds investors loyal to the bonds? I mean, if you see people returning and investing more. Do you see families? I mean, fathers, sons that they recommend to them? Can you elaborate about that a little?
Sure. So we've had great kind of generational investing. So it's when we were setting this call up, I sent a link to your office, and we actually have an Israel Bonds museum online right now. So that could be something interesting for folks to log in and view.
So tell us how to enter it.
Sure. So if you just go to israelbonds.com, on the right side of the header, there's a Israel Bonds Museum link, and you can look at that. But it's incredible how the history of the folks who have been involved in Israel Bonds. I mean, we've had from Sammy Davis Jr. to Jerry Stiller at our events. Really exciting folks. Obviously, the prime ministers have been involved. And I think that the most important part of what we have done is really ingrain that bond from the folks who did see the Israel bonds being purchased at synagogues during high holidays, and they've seen them for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And once in a while, we'll get a phone call saying, obviously less so now, but my brother, my father, somebody was at that Madison Square Garden rally in 1951, and we have just all of this history of folks that have been investing in Israel bonds. One of the really fun things that we get to see is that, if you receive bonds for your bar mitzvah, for example, you're 12 or you're 13, and when it's time to go to college, that's their 5-year bonds, and the bonds will come due, and then these 17 and 18-year-old kids have the opportunity to purchase, a car or pay for some of their college with the proceeds from Israel bonds. And it gives them a sense of connection. I think what Israel bonds is it's there's a term called an impact investment. A lot of people want to know where their money is going and what they're doing with it. And, folks aren't seeing that transparency necessarily. If you're investing in a mutual fund or an ETF, an exchange traded fund, you don't really know unless you do a lot of digging what you're investing in. What we find is that the connection is right there. When you invest in an Israel bond, and let's say you're writing us a check, the check is made payable to State of Israel. It's not going to some third-party company that we're taking all of these things, where your check goes directly.
What does it mean?
So it means that it goes directly into the budget, the annual budget of the finance ministry on an annual basis. So at the beginning of the year, they'll come to us and they'll say, we need X number of dollars. And for example, this year, we traditionally do about $1.1 billion as an organization in the US. This year, for example, with the pandemic and everything else, the finance ministry came to us and they said that they need additional funds. So they raised our goal by about 35% roughly. So our new goal is just under 1.5 billion for the United States. And so we've been working extra hard. We haven't really missed a day since everything shut down. We pretty much transferred everything online, and that's what we're seeing. So one of the other neat things that we do is we work with a lot of schools in the area, and for bar and bat mitzvah classes, and also for graduations. A lot of the schools decide to give Israel bonds as a connection to their graduates or to their teens, for just to keep the chain going and really instill that in the next generation.
And when they go visit Israel, they don't know, maybe thanks to their money, another bridge was built, another road, maybe they're taking the new train to Jerusalem thanks to the bonds. They don't know. I mean, everything that is new in Israel, the infrastructure, the development, can be thanks to the fact that they cared enough and invested had the trust to invest in Israel, in the Israel bonds.
I think it's a wonderful opportunity, or to be able to see that when you do visit the state of Israel, that Israel Bonds definitely had a part that it as an organization has played in the development of pretty much everything. It goes to a general fund, so where the dollars are allocated specifically, we're not able to say that X number of dollars went to project XYZ, but what it allows the finance ministry to do is to allocate funds, knowing that they have these funds that U.S. investors are lending them for X number of years to work on whatever projects that they see fit. And what it allows also is just a little bit of breathing room, so to speak, to be able to allocate resources towards the big picture things, the technology and the infrastructure and all of that. Not saying that it goes directly to any of those things, but they're kind of the result of the investment that our folks have been doing for so many years.
Going back to something that we mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, you think that this image of Israel as startup nation is helping selling the Israel bonds?
I think so. I think the overall success of the state of Israel, it's good PR. When there's so much bad PR and representation out there, I think that the contributions that Israel is making to the world that we're able to advocate are incredible. So yes, absolutely, the startup nation and the acquisitions of Israeli companies and the presence of Microsoft and Google in Israel, I think that all of those things combined, really speak to the belief of not just Jews in South Florida and the United States that support the state of Israel, but these are large organizations that are really putting their money where their mouths are and investing as well alongside the U.S. investors into the state of Israel. So absolutely, I think all of those. I don't know if one individual thing really does it. I think we're very fortunate to have so many great things coming out of Israel, not only on the technology front, but on the medical front, and on the diplomacy front, as has been evidenced recently by a couple of very interesting developments in the Middle East. So I think all of those things really give people a sense of confidence and a sense of really ownership in an investment that's doing very well.
I know that the high holidays are usually a very important season for the sales of the bonds. Now we are now in a very unique situation. How are you preparing for, on one hand, for the high holidays, on the other hand, through these circumstances of COVID-19 and this social distance and it's not only social distance, it's also feeling of people. I don't know what will happen next week or next year or next month. So how do you prepare for this when you come to promote the sales of the bonds?
So we're going to just knock on everybody's door. We're going to go one by one, and no, but there are a lot of different synagogues that are doing their own version of what high holidays are going to look like this year. Most that we've heard of are doing, virtual appeals and virtual services and all of that. Some are doing hybrids. For example, there's one in Aventura that's doing a drive-in series of events. So people will be socially distanced in their cars, but all together still. And they're doing it that way, and we're partnering with them. So traditionally, what has happened is that we've seen, people will come to their respective synagogue on either Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, and they'll see a tab card in their seat, which is basically an indication of interest of, yes, I would like to purchase a bond either for myself or the synagogue or as a gift or whatever it is. And we reach out to them afterwards and follow up with them. What we're doing this year is a little bit different. We are mailing those tab cards to our prior investors, and they can always obviously preempt that mailing that they should receive in the next couple of weeks, but they'll get them in the mail in advance, and then hopefully a lot of the synagogues that we've been so proud to work for over the years will continue to convey the message of the importance of investing in Israel. Obviously, we're led by our partner organizations and synagogues in many cases, so it's a new world for all of us with regard to how we're getting Israel bonds in front of our investors. But what we like to do on an ongoing basis is not just do the high holiday appeals. We're very active in programming with different synagogues throughout, obviously, our territory of Florida. And we do different events. We bring in speakers, we do challah bakes, we've done car shows, we've done art shows, we've done happy hours, we've done, just conversations with Israeli leaders such as yourself and different folks that come in and really represent well. What we've been fortunate enough to have over the past, and I guess this is the benefit, or one of the benefits, as you mentioned earlier, is that we're able to really make the organization as a whole a little bit smaller, in the sense of, if we were having in-person events, then our counterparts in Los Angeles wouldn't really be able to participate in them, obviously for geographical differences. But what we're able to have now is that we have more national events, which we'll get to in a little bit. But like on August 18th, for example, we were able to do a wonderful national event with Prime Minister Netanyahu, as well as Ambassador Ron Dermer, with some musical acts and all sorts of things as well. And then we're able to cross promote each other's events. So if we're having an event in Miami, all it takes is, the office in Cleveland or the office in Dallas is to share it with their communities. And we have so much more opportunity and exposure to learn about each other's territories and campaigns and things of that nature that's really exciting. So there's been a lot more collaboration with, what we would traditionally call a hindrance of a lack of, live events where we can, sit down with somebody and have it in person. But so that's a long answer to your question. But there's been so many things that have been developing that we're really excited to be able to work on.
Do you have like unofficial competition with other offices around the states who manage to sell more bonds?
So it's definitely unofficial, but I think it helps to drive our sales, to be able to say that, come on, Chicago's catching up. Let's do it.
So
we're very
where's
fortunate.
Florida so far?
So we're unofficially we're in second place in the country,
Wow.
which is great. We're just behind New York, but all of our offices do a really fantastic job in reaching out to their communities. We're very, very fortunate to have so many supporters of Israel in Florida and in the rest of our territory that it's great. So and a lot of what we have down here, as you well know, is we do have a large snowbird population as well. So we share a lot of those clients that come down from the rest of our territories. And what we're able to do is really get input from them and say, hey, this is something that worked in Cleveland. Would you guys be interested in doing it here? And we have all these different divisions that we're working on. We have
they can invest in Cleveland in the summer, and then invest in Florida in the winter.
Exactly.
I don't see any contradiction.
Exactly. It all goes to the same place, so we all try to play very nicely in the sandbox.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't see any Q&A from the audience. I do see some chat, but I don't see Q&A. So I will give you the floor to say last things, whatever you want, your message to those who listen to us and those who will watch us afterwards, because we will, of course, publish this on our Facebook page. And if you have a Facebook page, you're welcome to put it there as well. So tell us what's your message to the people before I wrap it. Yeah.
So first of all, obviously, I want to thank you and your team and your staff for being, just great collaborators in the community and always supporting us. I think that's been fantastic. For those who would like more information about Israel Bonds, you can email us. It's miami@israelbonds.com. It'll come directly to us. I would say my name, but it's a little tougher to spell, so Miami should be easier for everyone, and that'll get to us. If you have a specific affinity, if you'd like to get more involved in our women's division or our Young Investors Society or our legal division that's headed up by some local attorneys here as well. Those are all things that we're working on. The great thing about Israel Bonds is that we have something for everyone, and the investment capabilities start at just $36, like we mentioned earlier. So if you do receive a tab card in the mail this year, we would really appreciate if you invested and sent that tab card back. Again, it doesn't have to be $1 million investment. What we're looking for are individual purchasers as well, because it does help us to be able to say that X number of folks from the state of Florida are active supporters of the state of Israel through their investment dollars. And I think that those statistics and those numbers help us a little bit more with the institutional sales and the state sales and the counties and the hospitals and all of that. We're always looking for leaders of all ages, all levels of investment. So if anyone is out there, feel free to email us at miami@israelbonds.com, and I will do my best to get you involved in whatever capacity you'd like.
So before we end this, we do have a question from the watchers from the audience. The question is coming from Julius Jackson. He's asking, is it possible to connect with the executive director relative to the Alliance of Blacks and Jews insurance of Africa bonds for Israeli and indigenous companies activities in Africa? The person who's asking the question is Julius Jackson, Executive VP from the Alliance of Blacks and Jews.
So number one, Julius, I would love to connect with you on an individual, on a one-on-one. So feel free to reach out to me, and we can have a chat in the next couple of days to see what exactly you're looking to accomplish. Some of the funds that we raise and the bonds that we sell are solely to go to the state of Israel, but I'm happy to see if there are any other ways that we can work together, because I think that the organization that you're speaking of, and I was reading a little bit about it over the past few weeks, but I think you guys are doing some really important work given the political climate right now. So I would love to have the conversation with you soon as well.
I would like to thank Julius. I'm new here, but it seems that it's a very interesting organization, and I'd love to read about it and hear about it. I'm very happy that we to facilitate this connection between you two, and if something will come out of it, we'll be happy to maybe to hear from you later on this year. I want to take this opportunity to thank Vladi and your colleagues and everything that you're doing in the Israel Bonds as an Israeli citizen, and as an Israeli representative, because I think that the contribution of the Israeli bonds is not only in terms of the investments and in terms of the development of Israel, but also in the terms of the image of Israel. I think you're doing great service. And of course, we are very happy to collaborate with you always. And also take this opportunity to say Shana Tova, Happy New Year. And let's hope that it will be a healthy New Year, and that you will sell as many bonds as possible for the benefit of the State of Israel.
I agree.
Thank you very much for being here with us.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Bye.
Bye-bye.